Thanks so much for joining us for the second Meet VCU Authors event of the spring semester at the Humanities Research Center. If we haven't met, my name is Christina Stanch. I'm a professor of English here, and I direct the Humanities Research Center. And assisting me today are Ellie Musgrave and Hilary Levinson. Ellie is our administrative and communications coordinator, and Dr. Levinson is our assistant director. And Hilary will help me moderate today's Q&A session. As many of you know, we have quite a slate of events for the spring semester. I'll ask Ellie to post the link if you're interested in checking out other events, both online and in person. If you don't already receive our monthly newsletter, we can post the link for you to sign up. And if you're interested in other things we have done so far, we just released our brand new annual report, which you're welcome to take a look at. Today's event in our Meet VC Author series invites you to witness a seasoned author, I would say, our colleague Olivia Landry, who is the author of many books. And if you're new to this series, this is an opportunity to learn more about the book, also to celebrate its publication and to ask questions at the end. So if you have questions, please save them and post them in the Q&A function. Dr. Landry will speak for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have ample time for Q&A. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Landry, who is an associate professor of German and chair of the Department of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies here at VCU, and also doing a lot of work on the side as a member of the HRC Faculty Advisory Board. Thank you for that. Dr. Landry's research broadly spans film and media, as well as theater and performance studies. She has published many books. In reviewing her excellent list of publications, she has published a book every other year, starting in 2018. So this is a very impressive record, starting with her first book, Movement and Performance in Berlin, School Cinema, published with Indiana University Press in 2018, and which explores the contemporary film movement, the Berlin School through a recalibration of the body, movement, spectacle, sensation, and spectatorship in cinema. Her second book, Theater of Anger, Radical Transnational Performance in Contemporary Berlin, published by University of Toronto Press in 2020, examines contemporary transnational theater in Berlin through the affective political scope of anger as an attributed and justified affect that responds to social injustice. Her third book, I think some of you may have been present for this. I remember moderating this wonderful conversation on A Decolonizing Ear, documentary film Disrupts the Archive, published in 2022, also with the University of Toronto Press. This book investigates how documentary film can challenge conventions of listening and recording shaped by histories of colonial ethnography and extraction. Dr. Landry is also co-editor with Claudia Breger of Transnational German Film at the End of Neoliberalism, published in 2024. Also, numerous book chapters, journals in publications such as Studies in Gender and Sexuality, the Journal of Film and Video, German Studies Review, the New German Critique, and others. Dr. Landry's latest book, which is the subject of today's discussion, is called Cinema of Crushing Motherhood, a New Feminist Cinema, published by one of my favorite presses, the University of Illinois Press in 2025. And I say one of my favorite presses because when I was in grad school there, I worked for the press and acquisitions, and I published one of my books there, but that's besides the point. So the title of the book is Cinema of Crushing Motherhood, a New Feminist Cinema, which analyzes new feminist cinema, including contemporary films like Emily Atef's Das Fremde im Meer, I apologize for my German, and Savannah Leaf's Earth Mama, which portray motherhood as a source of regret, of exhaustion, rage, shame, guilt, and disgust. And as we'll learn today, undoubtedly, Dr. Landry surveys films released in North America, Europe, and Australia over a period beginning in 2007, as she clearly demonstrates revelation and the expression of negative feelings upend the traditional image of the perfect, self-sacrificial, and happy mother. And before I give away more about this fascinating book, I will stop here and invite you to listen in, jot down questions, and participate in the discussion at the end. Dr. Landry, congratulations on the publication of this wonderful new book, and welcome again to Meet VCU Authors.
Thank you so much, Christina. And thank you again for the invitation to come and talk a little bit about my new book. I'm going to jump into my PowerPoint. Okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm just going to make sure that yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. All right, can everyone see that? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you again for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be able to say a little bit about my book, which came out last October with the University of Illinois Press. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to start by just giving you a sense of the range and scope of films which engage with the topic of motherhood and specifically of crushing motherhood. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that means. But I wanted to start out by just giving you a list. And this list contains many of the films that I focus on in the book. It also contains some later films. So my book came out in 2025, and I more or less finished writing it in 2023 as book writing goes. So I wasn't able to include some of the later films that came out in 24 and especially in 2025. And I've highlighted those at the bottom. So these are films that have come out since, more or less since I finished writing the book. You'll probably recognize a few of the titles there. And the others are the films that I engage with in the book. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are plenty more films that engage with this topic. But I really wanted to give you a sense of, again, the range and the scope. And you'll notice that I've bolded a number of these titles, in fact, all but two. The titles that are bolded are films made by women filmmakers. And you'll notice that I've also put asterisks next to some of the films. These are debut films by those directors. I thought that was also interesting to point out. As Christina also mentioned in her very generous introduction, the first film I look at is from 2007, and the last film is from 2023. So we have nearly 2 decades of films. And you also notice that they do hail from a number of different countries, albeit European countries. I'm a scholar of German and Europe, and North America. We have a lot of films from the US, a film from Canada, and a handful of films from Australia as well. You may also notice, if you're familiar with some of these films, that they include series, okay, as well as feature films. This list also includes a number of documentaries, as well as fiction films, some kind of shorter films, also feature-length films. And as well, you have films of many different genres in this list. You have dramas, you have melodramas, you have thrillers, you have horror films, you have horror comedies. So it's really an incredible realms, which again are addressing this topic in different ways, and with which I also kind of engage in the book. So I just wanted to start out by giving you this kind of really extraordinary list of films. Okay, so I'm going to go back a bit, give you a bit of kind of history and context. My study builds on, to some extent, Lucy Fisher's study called Cinematernity, Film Motherhood Genre, which came out in 1996. And in this book, she coins the term cinematernity. And she begins her study with Edward Muybridge's proto-cinematic animal locomotion from 1887, and specifically the two plates, The Good Mother and The Bad Mother. And you can look these up online. They're readily available, and actually include them in my book. So in The Good Mother plate, you have a scene that plays out where a child approaches a mother with a bouquet of flowers, and then they embrace. And in the Bad Mother scene, you have a child being spanked by a woman, the mother, and they're slung over the mother's knee. Okay. And essentially, what Fisher's argument is, by kind of starting with these two plates, is that cinema itself is formed through these narrative models, formed through these tropes of the good mother and the bad mother. And I'm just give you a very brief kind of summary definition. So the good mother is a figure that is self-sacrificial, all-nurturing, and she is a mother completely invested in her husband and her children. And we see this figure throughout cinema history, even to this day, I would say, in a lot of melodrama. So I give you just two kind of classic examples. Stella Dallas from 1937, directed by King Vidor, and the later Steel Magnolias, directed by Herbert Ross, from 1989. And there are plenty of other examples. And the bad mother, by contrast, is typically a self-centered figure, neglectful of her children, and quite often also evil. And we see this figure significantly in horror film. And, again, just two kind of classical examples, Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960 and Brian De Palma's Carrie from 1976. And so what Fisher's study does, and I think does, oh, excuse me, and I have studied twice there, quite successfully, is to move beyond these tropes of the good mother and bad mother and look for nuances in film and in film's portrayal of mother and maternal figures. So this is kind of the background to my own study. And what it essentially kind of following from Fisher's study, I wanted to pose the question, well, what happens afterward? Her book comes out in 1996, right? What happens with the late 90s, the early 2000s? And I decided to look specifically at films that were made after 2000. And the first film I look at, as I mentioned, is from 2007. I should also add, I tend to look at contemporary cinema. That's kind of more my area. So this was also fitting for me. I also note that there are some interesting influences, right? So we think about a new cinematernity. there are a lot of significant kind of changes and again, influences that are happening as of 2000. And I've just noted a few here. We have just that satisfaction with neoliberal post-feminism, right? And again, I'm just kind of summarizing. Neoliberal post-feminism was prominent in the 1990s onward, of course, famously critiqued by Angela McRobbie. And it was essentially this idea that, well, we have equality now, so we don't need feminism anymore, right? And in terms of motherhood, it really posits this individualistic, perfect, and positive type of mothering. And one of the offshoots, of course, is new momism, which has been described as a kind of re-domestication of women. And then also the more recent would have been called kind of tradwife trends, this return to kind of 1950s mothering. Another influence, which is significant for my book, is the regretting motherhood debate or discourse, which was kind of set into motion by Orna Donat, who published an article in Signs in 2015. It's based on a study performed in Israel, where she interviews a number of mothers who confess kind of regretting being a mother. And this had a very strong influence, specifically in continental Europe, in Germany and Spain. And then we have the influence of family abolition, the family abolition discourse, which is not new or unique to the 2000s. It's actually influenced by Marxism, was also important for feminism in the 1970s, but it kind of made a comeback in also around kind of mid 2010s. And became very prominent in radical feminist and queer scholarly circles. And I've just noted a few authors who have been writing on the topic. And then, of course, we have the influence of COVID-19, which, among other things, became a very clear reminder that women and mothers still perform a disproportionate amount of care and housework, right? And then finally, and I think it's really important to note that coming into the 2000s, more women are making films. I think, filmmaking is still, to this day, kind of male-dominated profession, but more and more women are making films, and they're making films about motherhood, right? Okay. So what I don't want to say my observation has been, what really kind of brings these films together is not only their interest in motherhood, but also in their concern and exploration of negative feelings. So what I have observed is that screen mothers experience a range of negative emotions. And I look specifically at regret, exhaustion, and I understand exhaustion isn't really an emotion, but it is a kind of state. Rage, shame, guilt, and disgust. And I decided to also structure my chapters through these different emotions or states. But I want to note, of course, this is also a cinema that is feminist and political. Not to say that focusing on affect and feelings is not, but I think it's important to also add that here. And this brings me to the dual significance of crushing, in the book's title. So these films explore the crushing and exhausting responsibility of motherhood for mothers, and they crush the image of the perfect, self-sacrificial, devoted, and of course, happy mother, right? And this, the term crushing actually came to me through the influence of the film The Lost Daughter by Maggie Gyllenhaal, which came out in 2021, in which the main character, the mother character played by Olivia Colman, delivers this line, "Children are a crushing responsibility." And I wanted to actually, just as an example, kind of show you that trailer. I don't know, probably a number of you have seen the film. It's on Netflix, but I'll show you the trailer just to give you a sense of kind of what I'm looking at, but also we hear this line in the trailer, so I think it's very significant to the film. All right.
Ms. Caruso, welcome.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I work at the beach house. Just let me know if you need anything.
Great.
Get up! Mommy, get up!
You don't have kids? Yes, I have 2 daughters. Hey, your mommy's big girl. You're my big girl. She's driving me crazy.
What were your daughters like when they were little?
I can't remember much, actually.
I saw you at the beach today.
I didn't see you.
I saw you.
The little girl lost her doll. She wouldn't stop crying.
Children are a crushing responsibility. Happy birthday.
Mama.
I'm working. I'm suffocating.
I'll give you 3 seconds to come back. 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that trailer to give you a kind of sense of some of the films that I'm looking at, and to also give a plug to the film, which again was inspirational in coming up with the kind of my conceptual framework. But I wanted to also say a little bit about my theoretical frameworks, and then I'll dive into the chapters a little bit to give you a sense of kind of what films I'm looking at and how I'm reading these films. So I think it's important to note that this book shifts away, obviously, from the child's perspective, and it does insofar as it's reading these films, and the films are also shifting away from the child's perspective. And I think that's an interesting move because, of course, the child's perspective is so integral to kind of traditional psychoanalytic approaches. And this move away means a shift towards the mother's experience and subject position, which becomes very important. So I do not engage with psychoanalytic arguments for the most part, I can say. I instead refer to feminist film theory, feminist philosophy, film philosophy, affect theory, and of course, motherhood studies. And I should note of the latter, of course, Adrienne Rich's text of Woman-Born Motherhood as Experience and Institution, which came out in 1976, is significant also for my book. And definitely her kind of description of the rupture between what she calls the experience of motherhood versus the institution of motherhood. That having been said, I'm recognizing that this book came out in 1976 as valuable as it still is. I do attempt to kind of move away from it in certain places as well. So, but I wanted to kind of indicate the importance of that book and that study for my own work. So I'll just dive into the chapters, just to give you a bit of again kind of perspective on kind of my thinking and my approach. The first chapter looks at regret. And again, regret is influenced by Orna Donat's kind of Regretting Motherhood, a study that was first kind of published in article form in 2015 and then became a book and was also translated into many languages. And there have been a number of authors who have also kind of picked up on this topic. Many authors in Germany. It's also kind of why I'm drawn to this discourse, probably because of my own disciplinary background. But regret, it's what's especially interesting about Donat's study is that regret is and something that I've kind of perceived is more radical than ambivalence, right? We hear a lot about, and there's been a lot written on maternal ambivalence, right? Which kind of teeters between negative and positive feelings. And instead, regret is really about the desire to undo motherhood. So it really kind of goes an extra step. But I think it's also important to note that regret is kind of non-pathologized and it's kind of, that Donat takes away the typically pathologizing approach to regret by saying that actually it is a powerful tool of self-recognition that opens up a space for reflecting on one's own decisions. And this chapter is a little unique because I actually look at two documentary films, and they both directly engage with the regretting motherhood debate. One is from Germany and one is from Spain. And the first one, actually called Regretting Motherhood, is interesting insofar as it is a series of interviews with mothers that kind of, in that sense, kind of mimics the study itself by Donat. And the second film, Mater Amatissima, is a Spanish compilation film. So the second chapter looks at exhaustion, and exhaustion really is an existential state. And here I couple Simone de Beauvoir's work with Gilles Deleuze, kind of an unlikely bedfellows, but nonetheless, I think very interesting to look at Beauvoir's kind of imminent situation of the housewife and mother, who is condemned to kind of quotidian existence, the quotidian existence of domestic drudgery and repetition, something that she examines in The Second Sex. And to bring that into conversation with Gilles Deleuze's post-war time image cinema, which focuses on the kind of tired bodies and bodies as markers of time. And I think the maternal bodies, the screen bodies in these films also become markers of time. And I look at 4 fiction features in this chapter. The Babadook from 2014. I'm sure a number of you have seen it. Horror film from Australia. Tully from 2018. A German film, Ich war zu Hause aber, from 2019. And then the US film 1001 from 2023. Chapter 3 focuses on rage. And here, like the chapter on regret, I really work against the pathology of rage and the taboo of maternal rage. And my thinking through rage is influenced by a tradition of feminist anger. And I kind of use rage and anger interchangeably, something that Bell Hooks also does. And I kind of engage with Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Marilyn Frye, Sarah Ahmed, also Marianne Hirsch, a number of different feminist scholars. And I'm interested in thinking about anger as a response to a wrong in these films, and anger as a liberating, strengthening, and clarifying emotion. And here I actually look at the fiction film Babadook, so return to the Babadook, and kind of combine it with explorations of 2 series. So The Baby, which was is a UK series created by Lucy Gamer and Sean Robbins Grace, and then Pieces of Her, which is a Netflix series created by Charlotte Stout. And then chapter 4 moves to shame. And what I find really fascinating about shame, especially within the context of cinema, is that it really kind of brings out that unyielding kind of being seen by the other, this idea of presence and exposure that one cannot escape. And for this, I turn to a number of different thinkers, philosophers, and affect theorists, Levinas, Merleau-Ponty, Sartre, and Tompkins and Sedgwick. And I'm interested in how, of course, shame really leads to perceived failure and blame, especially in the context of mothering. And again, how it really works with the kind of cinematic gaze and framing in a really interesting way in these films. And here I look at the 4 fiction features, Madonna, an earlier film from Germany, and The Lost Mother, Saint-Omer, 2022 film from France, and then Earth Mama from 2023. Chapter 5 looks at guilt. And here I'm interested really in the trajectory of care and what is called Schuld in German. And in German, the word Schuld can be guilt, and it can also mean indebtedness. And I kind of run it through thinkers like Nietzsche, Heidegger, Levinas, and then finally Beauvoir. And I'm interested in how, or interested in kind of this idea of the mother's absolute obligation to support the well-being and flourishing of her child, and how that becomes also a sacrifice of her own freedoms, projects, and desires, or how it can, at least, in a lot of these films. And specifically, the kind of burden of duty, which becomes coupled with this inescapable sense of shirking maternal duties, right? Which is kind of becomes this vicious cycle, which one cannot get out of. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but of course it really is influenced by Beauvoir's kind of ethics of ambiguity. And here I look at the three fiction features. We need to talk about Kevin. So we have these kind of extreme cases. I don't know if you're familiar with this film, and Mommy. And then the later film, which is a slightly less extreme case, Cinco Lobitos. So one film from the UK, and then a film from Canada, and finally a Spanish film. And the last chapter, disgust. Disgust is, I think, always kind of makes people stop short and kind of ask, well, okay, what are you doing with that? Well, I think I should mention that I was particularly interested in how many horror films kind of employ the figure of the disgusting mother, much like the kind of bad mother. And I wanted to ask, well, what about the disgusted mother, right? And so that led me to kind of start exploring maternal figures who are disgusted or alienated by motherhood, right? And various kind of experiences of motherhood. And I feel like you can't talk about disgust without, considering Julia Kristeva, especially in the context of motherhood. So I kind of I'm interested in turning Kristeva's corporeal abjection on its head, and instead of, and this is actually a quote from her study, I feel like vomiting the mother. In these films, the mother feels like vomiting motherhood. And here I look at three fiction features. Das Fremde in Mir was a German-French collaboration, an earlier film from 2008. I returned to The Lost Daughter, and then I finished with Baby Ruby, a US film from 2022. So that was the last chapter. I thought I would just end it by showing another clip. This is the trailer from If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And I should note that this is, of course, a film that came out just last year. So unfortunately, it did not make it into my book. But it really importantly and interestingly incorporates a lot of the ideas that I kind of explore in Cinema of Crushing Motherhood. And I thought it was also appropriate because the main actress, Rose Byrne, is up for Best Actress, up for an Oscar for her performance in this film. And I think her performance in this film is really quite spectacular. So I'll leave you with a trailer from this film.
Mommy, the bathroom has water in it. Come quickly!
I try very hard to be in control of her and everything, but it may as well not even be there at all.
I don't like how it feels in my sock.
Just stay there, okay? Just hold on.
How deep is it? Are we gonna die? Is the house gonna fall on top of us? Mommy!
Hey, we just got home, and you would not believe.
We are out of time. I have another patient coming, so.
Wait, now? What about the 10-minute warning?
Yeah, I just wasn't paying attention.
You didn't respond to the email that I sent you about my dream.
I don't respond to my clients' dream emails.
I know you have a lot on your plate, but she's getting better, and the rest of it is totally temporary. You need to be a team. This whole...
I know. The problem with that logic, though, is that I'm not a housewife. I work, too.
Oh,
I can see you now.
You've missed the last few weeks of family sessions.
I told you what happened. Our entire ceiling fell down and we're living out of the hotel.
Yes on these, but no on the line.
But it isn't even 2.
It's 1:58. By the time I ring these up, it will be past 2.
Yo, Crazy Pants. I was gonna partake in surfing the web for some things that I'm into.
What kind of stuff? I'm supposed to know how to fix this. I'm supposed to know how to fix her.
What is it you think it's your job to fix?
I'm asking you what I'm supposed to do. Can you hear me?
I would like you to get a good night's sleep.
Whatever. This isn't supposed to be what it's like. This isn't it. This can't be it. Everything is under control.
Okay. Oops.
Oh, wow. What a strong end.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. I just leave you with a very partial bibliography. Anna, thank you.